This story is titled, "My Father Was So Obsessed with Being the Perfect Dad to My Stepsisters that He Abandoned Me at a Shopping Mall in Another State. But now he's going to face the consequences of his actions." Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Hey Reddit, you ever feel like the world just shifted under your feet and no one bothered to warn you? That's how it felt when my parents split up. I was 12 when it all went down. One minute, my mom and dad were together, and the next, my mom was gone. She didn't really explain why. According to dad, she just said something about needing space and left. My dad, Logan, fought hard for custody. He told the court it was for my own good, that I needed stability, and that my mom wasn't reliable enough to raise me. Looking back now, I realize how much of that was him twisting the truth. But at the time, I didn't question it. I stayed with him, and my mom didn't fight it. She just disappeared. We've talked here and there over the years, but it's always been distant. Like talking to someone who used to be in your life but isn't anymore. At first, it was okay living with just my dad. Things were quieter, and we found a routine. But then Haley came into the picture, and everything changed. Haley was my dad's girlfriend for all of 4 months before they got married. She came with 2 daughters of her own, Mia, 13, and Ava, 11. I didn't think much of it when he told me about her. I figured, hey, maybe it's good for him to have someone again. But when they moved in, it was like my dad had been replaced. From the moment Haley and her daughters stepped through the door, my dad became obsessed with being the perfect stepdad. He'd gush about how Mia was so smart, or how Ava was so talented. He'd tell anyone who'd listen about how they needed him because their own dad wasn't in the picture. It was like I stopped existing. Before Haley, my dad and I used to hang out all the time. He'd pick me up from school, and we'd go grab ice cream or play cards in the living room. He wasn't the warmest guy, but he was there for me. After Haley moved in, all of that stopped. Now it's all about her and her kids. Haley made it clear early on that she wasn't interested in being a stepmom to me. She wasn't outright mean, at least not at first, but she never tried to bond with me either. It was more subtle, like how she'd always find a way to exclude me from things. She'd organize family movie nights, but somehow I was never invited. If I asked why, she'd say something like, "Oh, I thought you were busy with homework." What really stung was how she nitpicked everything I did. If I left my shoes by the door, it was a problem. If I didn't make my bed, I'd get a long speech about taking responsibility. Meanwhile, Mia and Ava could leave their stuff lying around, and Haley wouldn't say a word. And my dad, he never stood up for me. If I complained about Haley being unfair, he'd wave it off, saying, "She just wants to make the house better for everyone." Better for who, though? Mia and Ava, on the other hand, could do no wrong. My dad spoiled them like crazy. New clothes, gadgets, trips to amusement parks. Meanwhile, I had to beg just to get money for school supplies. If I pointed out the favoritism, he'd say, "They've been through a lot, and I'm trying to make up for it." One time, Mia borrowed my phone charger without asking and broke it. When I told her to replace it, she shrugged and said, "It's just a charger, relax." I went to my dad, thinking he'd back me up, but he just laughed it off and said, "It's not a big deal. I'll get you a new one." He never did. It wasn't just material things, though. It was everything. When Mia got a good grade, my dad would brag about it for days. When I brought home straight A's, all I got was a half-hearted, "Good job." Ava started taking dance classes, and my dad rearranged his whole schedule to make it to every recital. I had been on the honor roll for 2 years straight, and he'd never once attended an award ceremony. What hurt the most was how he made me feel like I was the problem. Whenever I tried to bring up how I felt, he'd say I was being dramatic or selfish. One time, I told him I missed the way things used to be, just the 2 of us. He sighed and said, "You need to learn to share, Madison. It's not just about you anymore." Share what, though? My room? My dad? My life? It's not like I haven't tried to make things work. I've gone out of my way to be polite to Haley and her daughters, even when they've been downright rude to me. I've done extra chores, stayed out of their way, and kept my mouth shut when they've treated me like a second-class citizen in my own house. But no matter what I do, it's never enough. Sometimes I wonder if my dad even notices how much I'm struggling. Does he see how I eat dinner alone most nights because Haley's made something I can't stand? Does he notice how I've stopped asking him to do things with me because I know the answer will be no? Or is he too busy playing hero to Haley and her kids to care? I don't know. All I know is that I feel like a guest in my own home. A few weeks ago, I realized things could actually get worse. I didn't think that was possible given how invisible I already felt in my own house. But Haley managed to pull it off. For context, I have a severe shellfish allergy. It's not some mild reaction where I just get itchy. This is the kind of allergy where even a trace of cross-contamination can send me to the ER. My dad knows this. Haley knows this. I've been dealing with it my whole life, so I'm very careful. One night, I came downstairs for dinner and saw Haley had made shrimp stir-fry. No big deal. I don't expect her to cater to me, but when I asked what I was supposed to eat, she said she had made me something separately. I should have known better than to trust her. She handed me a plate of noodles, and it looked fine at first. But as soon as I sat down, I noticed something was off. The noodles smelled faintly of shrimp. I asked if she'd cooked my food in the same pan as the stir-fry. She shrugged and said, "Yeah, but I rinsed it out. It's fine." It wasn't fine. I told her I couldn't eat it because even a little cross-contamination could trigger my allergy. She rolled her eyes and said, "You're being dramatic. It's not like there's actual shrimp in there." I pushed the plate away and told her I'd make something for myself. My dad, of course, picked that exact moment to walk into the kitchen. He saw the untouched plate and immediately asked why I wasn't eating. Before I could explain, Haley jumped in and said, "She's just being picky. I went out of my way to make her something special, and she's refusing to eat it." Special? It was freaking noodles cooked in shrimp-flavored oil. When I tried to explain, my dad cut me off and started lecturing me about gratitude. He said, "Haley didn't have to make you anything. You should at least say thank you." I was so stunned I couldn't even respond. I ended up skipping dinner that night. Later, when I was in my room, I overheard Haley talking to Mia and Ava. She was laughing and said something like, "Madison needs to toughen up. She's not a baby anymore." That's when it hit me. She didn't care. She knew I was allergic, and she didn't care. She thought I was just being difficult to make her life harder. The next morning, things got worse. I used one of the towels Haley had washed the night before, and within minutes, my skin started to itch. At first, I thought maybe it was just dry skin or something, but when I looked in the mirror, I saw red welts starting to form on my arms and neck. It took me a while to figure out what was going on, but then I remembered Haley mentioning she'd found some fancy detergent on sale. I went downstairs to check the laundry room, and sure enough, the detergent contained enzymes derived from shellfish. I felt like I was losing my mind. Who uses specialty detergent without checking what's in it? Especially when someone in the house has severe allergies? I showed my dad the welts and told him what happened. For the first time in a long time, he actually looked concerned. He apologized and said he didn't know Haley had bought new detergent. I told him I didn't think she did it on purpose, but I was starting to feel like my health wasn't a priority in this house. To my surprise, he didn't brush me off. He said he'd talk to Haley and make sure she was more careful in the future. He even offered to take me shopping for hypoallergenic detergent, which was a nice gesture, I guess. That evening, my dad came into my room and said he wanted to make it up to me. He suggested we take a weekend trip together, just the two of us. He said it would be a chance for us to reconnect, and he promised we'd do whatever I wanted. At first, I didn't know how to feel. Part of me was skeptical, like this was just his way of avoiding a real conversation about the deeper issues. But another part of me, probably the little kid who missed having a dad, wanted to believe him. I asked if he was serious, and he said yes. He even asked me to pick the destination. I suggested Portland because I'd always wanted to visit the Japanese garden and some of the cool bookstores I'd read about online. For the first time in what felt like forever, I was actually excited about something. I thought maybe this trip could be a turning point. The drive to Portland started off fine. My dad was unusually upbeat, chatting about random things like where we'd stop for snacks and what kind of music I wanted to listen to. For once, it felt like it was just the two of us again, like the old days. I let myself believe this trip might actually be what I needed, a chance to reconnect with my dad without all the drama at home. But that hope lasted about as long as it took for us to pull into the driveway of the Airbnb. As we unpacked the car, another car pulled in behind us. I recognized it instantly, Haley's SUV. My stomach dropped, and before I could even process what was happening, Haley and my stepsisters, Mia and Ava, were climbing out, chatting and laughing like they were on vacation. I turned to my dad, and he had that guilty look he gets when he knows he's about to upset me. "I thought it'd be nice to make this a family trip," he said, as if that explained everything. Family trip? Wasn't this supposed to be our trip? Just me and him? I wanted to yell, but I didn't. What was the point? My dad had already decided, and nothing I said was going to change that. So I grabbed my bag and headed inside, biting my tongue the whole way. The Airbnb was a cute little house near downtown Portland. It had a cozy living room, a fully stocked kitchen, and 2 bedrooms. One for my dad and Haley, and another with bunk beds for me, Mia, and Ava. Yep, I didn't even get my own space. I shoved my bag onto one of the top bunks and tried not to think about how this trip was already ruined. That night, my dad announced we were going out for dinner. I was still holding on to a sliver of hope that we'd go somewhere I could actually enjoy, but Haley had other plans. "There's this amazing seafood place nearby," she said, practically bouncing with excitement. I reminded them of my allergy, hoping my dad would back me up. Instead, he said, "You can just order something safe. It's only 1 meal." "Only 1 meal? Sure, Dad. Let me just risk an allergic reaction because Haley wants shrimp." We went to the seafood place, and the smell hit me the second we walked in. Overwhelming and nauseating. I checked the menu, and as expected, there was nothing I could eat except plain white rice. So that's what I ordered. Meanwhile, Haley and the girls were feasting on lobster, crab, and shrimp, talking about how delicious everything was. I sat there staring at my sad little bowl of rice, trying not to cry. My dad didn't even notice. The next morning, I woke up determined to salvage the day. There was a tourist spot I'd been dying to visit, a beautiful park with hiking trails and gardens. I told my dad about it, and he seemed on board. I thought, finally, something I actually want to do. But the second we got there, Mia and Ava started complaining. It was too hot, too boring, too much walking. Haley chimed in, saying it wasn't fair to drag them around if they weren't enjoying themselves. My dad gave in, of course, and suggested we leave early to go shopping instead. I asked if I could stay and explore on my own. I wasn't trying to be difficult. I just wanted a couple of hours to enjoy the park. Haley immediately shut it down. "I don't think that's a good idea," she said. "You're too irresponsible." Irresponsible? What was I going to do, get lost in a park? I was 15, not 5. But again, my dad sided with her, saying it was better if we stuck together. So we left. They spent the rest of the afternoon at the mall. I trailed behind them while Mia and Ava darted in and out of every expensive store, showing off their new clothes and accessories. My dad carried their bags like some kind of personal assistant. At one point, I wandered off to look at a bookstore, figuring no one would notice. When I came back, Haley made a big show of how worried she'd been. She told my dad I shouldn't be allowed to run off like that, and he actually apologized to her on my behalf. Back at the Airbnb that night, I overheard Haley talking to my dad. She said the trip was all about me, and that I was acting spoiled. She complained that she and the girls weren't getting to do the things they wanted, because I was hogging all the attention. I waited for my dad to defend me, to tell her this trip was supposed to be for us, not them. But instead, he agreed with her. He said he didn't want to upset her or the girls. I couldn't believe it. After everything, he still couldn't see what was happening, or maybe he just didn't care. Either way, I felt completely invisible. That night, I lay awake in the bunk bed, listening to Mia and Ava whisper about their plans for the next day. They were so excited, talking about more shopping and another fancy restaurant. Meanwhile, I was just trying to figure out how I'd ended up here, on this trip that was supposed to be about reconnecting with my dad, but had turned into another reminder of how little I mattered in his world. I'm counting the hours to go home. I don't know why I even agreed to come. Maybe I was naive to think things could be different. Maybe I just wanted to believe for a little while that my dad still cared enough to make an effort. But after this trip, I'm not so sure anymore. Thanks for reading. I really needed to get this off my chest. I don't know what to do and would really appreciate any advice you guys give me. I'll keep you updated. Update 1. Hey, it's Madison again. After everything that had already gone wrong on the trip, I didn't think it could get worse. I thought I'd hit rock bottom, but apparently there's always another level when it comes to my dad and Haley. It was the last day of our so-called family trip to Portland. By this point, I was exhausted, physically and emotionally. I had barely spoken to anyone that morning because I couldn't muster the energy to fake being okay anymore. The Airbnb felt suffocating, so when my dad said we were going to a nearby mall, I figured it might be a chance to clear my head. When we got to the mall, I asked if I could explore on my own for a bit. I wasn't trying to be rebellious. I just needed a break from all the forced family time. To my surprise, my dad said it was fine. He even gave me a specific spot to meet them in an hour. I thought, okay, maybe he's starting to trust me a little. I wandered around the mall, trying to enjoy myself. I stopped by a bookstore and spent way too long flipping through random novels. Then I went to a little shop that sold handmade jewelry, and bought myself a bracelet with the little bit of money I'd saved. For the first time in days, I felt a tiny bit of peace. But that feeling didn't last. When I got to the meeting spot, they weren't there. At first, I thought maybe I was early, so I waited. 10 minutes passed, then 20. I started to feel uneasy. I called my dad, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried Haley next, nothing. Mia and Ava, same thing. I started walking around the mall, thinking maybe they were nearby and just lost track of time. But the more I searched, the more panicked I felt. This wasn't like when they ditch me at home for hours and forget to tell me where they were going. This was an entirely different level of abandonment. After about 30 minutes of searching, I finally approached mall security. I felt embarrassed, like I was a little kid who'd gotten lost. But what else could I do? I explained the situation to the security guard, and he could see how freaked out I was. He took me to their office and called the police to help. The officers were kind, but I could tell they were just as confused as I was. They asked for my dad's phone number and tried calling him themselves. No answer. They asked me if I knew where he might be, but I had no idea. That's when one of the officers asked if I had any way to track him. I almost said no, but then I remembered something. My dad and I had set up Find My iPhone on our phones a while ago. He'd insisted on it just in case, back when he actually cared about my safety. When they pulled up his location, my stomach dropped. His phone, and Haley's and the girls', was miles away, heading south on the highway. They were on their way back home, without me. I just sat there staring at the screen, trying to process what I was seeing. The officers were talking, but their voices sounded muffled, like they were far away. All I could think was, he left me. My own dad left me. The police kept trying to call him, but he didn't answer. They left voicemails, explaining that I was still at the mall and needed to be picked up. Nothing. No response. Eventually, it hit me. They weren't coming back. That's when I broke down. I cried harder than I've ever cried in my life, right there in the security office with strangers watching me. I couldn't believe this was real. How could my own father leave me in another state like I didn't matter? The officers tried to comfort me, but there wasn't much they could do. They asked if there was anyone else they could call, and that's when I thought of my mom. I hadn't spoken to her much in years, but she was the only person I could think of who might actually care. I gave them her number, and they let me call her myself. She picked up almost immediately, and as soon as I heard her voice, I started crying again. I told her everything. The trip, Haley, the mall, how my dad had just left me. She was furious. I could hear it in her voice. She told me to stay put and said she'd book me a ticket home. One of the officers stayed with me while we waited for the flight confirmation. I had to spend a few more hours at the mall, but at least I wasn't alone anymore. When the time came, the police escorted me to the airport. I felt like a kid being dropped off at daycare, but I was too tired to care. All I wanted was to get home, or at least somewhere that felt like home. When I landed, my mom was waiting for me at the airport. I don't think I've ever been so relieved to see her. She hugged me, and for the first time in years, I felt safe. On the drive to her house, she didn't ask too many questions. She just let me sit in silence and process everything. But I could tell she was angry, not at me, but at my dad. She told me I didn't have to go back if I didn't want to, and for the first time, I started to believe her. I don't know what's going to happen next, but for now, I'm just grateful to be away from my dad and Haley. What they've put me through is something I can never forgive. I have to go now, but I'll keep you updated. Your comments and advice already helped me a lot and gave me the kind of support I need right now. Thanks a lot, Reddit. Update 2, hey again. So, staying with my mom has been a mix of relief and emotional whiplash. On one hand, it's been such a blessing to be away from the chaos of my dad's house. For the first time in years, I feel like I can breathe. On the other hand, being with my mom has brought up so many truths I wasn't prepared for. When I first moved in, my mom was surprisingly calm about everything. She didn't press me for details about the trip or push me to talk about what happened with my dad. She just made it clear that I was welcome to stay as long as I needed. But as the days went on and I started opening up, she began sharing her side of the story. And let me tell you, it was a lot to take in. One of the first things she told me was about the divorce. My dad always made it seem like my mom gave up on me, like she didn't even try to fight for custody. But according to her, that couldn't be further from the truth. She said she wanted joint custody, but my dad fought tooth and nail to get full custody. And the way he did it? He lied. Apparently, when I was little, there was an incident where I got really sick after eating expired food. I vaguely remember it. It was one of those moments that sticks with you in flashes. My stomach hurt so badly I couldn't stand up, and I ended up throwing up all night. My mom took care of me, stayed by my side, and made sure I was okay. What I didn't know was that the expired food, my dad gave it to me. He was in a rush to get to work and handed me a snack without checking the date. When I got sick, he convinced my mom not to tell anyone, saying it would cause unnecessary drama with his family. She didn't realize at the time that he'd later twist that same incident to make her look like an unfit mother. During the custody battle, my dad used it as evidence that my mom was neglectful. He painted her as irresponsible and careless, making it seem like she had endangered me. She said she was blindsided. She never thought he'd stoop so low, but he did, and the court believed him. That's why he got full custody. Hearing all of this made my blood boil. For years, I thought my mom just didn't want me, that she walked away because she didn't care. But that wasn't the case at all. She fought for me, and my dad manipulated the situation to make sure she lost. It made me rethink everything I thought I knew about my dad. For so long, I'd given him the benefit of the doubt, even when he was treating me like I didn't matter. I always thought, he's my dad. He's doing his best. But now I'm not so sure. As if that wasn't enough, my mom also told me about my grandmother, Lena. I hadn't seen her in years, and I just assumed we'd drifted apart. But my mom said my dad cut her off after she voiced concerns about Haley. Apparently, Lena never liked Haley. From the moment they got together, she felt like something was off. She thought Haley was too controlling and worried about how quickly my dad was moving the relationship forward. My dad didn't want to hear it, so he shut her out. My mom encouraged me to reach out to Lena, so I did. When I called her, she was so happy to hear from me that she almost cried. She invited me over, and when I got there, we sat down for what turned into a 3-hour conversation. Lena confirmed everything my mom had told me. She said my dad had always been obsessed with appearances, and that he couldn't stand the idea of anyone criticizing his choices. When Lena voiced her concerns about Haley, he accused her of being unsupportive and told her to stay out of his life. That's why we stopped seeing her, because my dad wanted it that way. But the biggest revelation? Lena told me that Haley used to be my dad's co-worker. That's how they met. It all made sense. Haley wasn't just some random woman my dad fell in love with. She'd been in his life for years, working behind the scenes. According to Lena, my dad started relying on Haley for more and more things after the divorce. She thinks Haley saw an opportunity and took it. Looking back, it explains so much. Haley's insistence on controlling everything, her constant need to put me down. It wasn't just about being a bad stepmom. It was about solidifying her position in my dad's life. And my dad, being the people pleaser he is, let it happen. Hearing all of this was overwhelming. I felt like my entire childhood had been rewritten in a matter of days. But at the same time, it was validating. For years, I'd been gaslit into thinking I was the problem, that I was too difficult or too sensitive. Now I see that wasn't true. If anything, I was just caught in the crossfire of my dad's bad decisions. Being with my mom has been like stepping into an entirely different world. She's patient and kind in a way my dad never was. When she says she's going to do something, she actually follows through. She listens to me, not just to respond, but to understand. I've also started spending more time with Lena, which has been amazing. She's so warm and supportive, and I forgot how much I missed having her in my life. The more I learn about my dad, the more I realize how much damage he's done. Not just to me, but to everyone around him. He's so obsessed with looking like the perfect father that he doesn't see how badly he's hurt the people who actually care about him. At this point, I definitely won't forgive him, and we won't let him get away after the harm he did to me. I'll let you know our next steps. Thanks for sticking around throughout this mess. Update 3. Hey everyone, I didn't expect to be back with another update so soon. But things took a turn I wasn't expecting. Buckle up because this one's intense. So, when my mom and I decided to confront my dad, I wasn't entirely sure it was the right move. It felt dramatic, like something you'd see on a bad TV show. But at the same time, I knew we couldn't let him get away with everything he'd done. The final push came from my grandmother, Lena, who said, "If you don't hold him accountable, he'll keep thinking he can treat people this way." The opportunity presented itself sooner than I expected. My dad's side of the family was hosting a big gathering at my uncle's house. My dad, Haley, and the girls were going, and Lena said we should crash it. "It's the only way to make sure everyone hears the truth," she told me. So we planned it out. My mom, Lena, and I would show up unannounced. When we arrived, the party was already in full swing. My uncle's backyard was packed with relatives I hadn't seen in years. There were kids running around, people laughing and catching up, the smell of burgers on the grill. It all felt so normal, which made what we were about to do feel even more surreal. My dad spotted us almost immediately. His face went pale, like he'd just seen a ghost. Haley, who was standing next to him, looked confused at first, but her expression quickly turned to annoyance. "Madison?" my dad said. walking toward me. His voice was calm, but I could tell he was rattled. "What are you doing here?" I didn't even let him finish. "We need to talk," I said, loud enough for the people around us to hear. The conversations nearby quieted down as people started to notice the tension. My dad tried to steer me away from the crowd, but I stood my ground. "No, we're doing this here," I said, in front of everyone. And then I let it all out. I told everyone how he'd left me in Portland, how I'd had to call the police because I couldn't find him, how I discovered through Find My iPhone that he was already halfway home. I told them about Haley's negligence with my allergies, how she'd cooked food that could have sent me to the hospital and didn't even care. By the time I was done, you could hear a pin drop. My dad looked like he didn't know whether to be angry or embarrassed. Haley was red in the face, and Mia and Ava had slunk to the back of the crowd, clearly uncomfortable. My mom backed me up with receipts, texts, call logs, everything. She showed everyone the messages I'd sent her from the mall, the voicemails the police had left for my dad, even a screenshot of the Find My iPhone map showing him driving away. It was undeniable. Haley, of course, tried to spin the situation. She jumped in saying, "It's not what it looks like. Madison's exaggerating. We thought she was at the Airbnb. We didn't realize she wasn't with us until it was too late. I wasn't about to let her get away with that." "Really? Because the police called you, and you still didn't come back. And what about the seafood dinner? Or the detergent that gave me hives? Are you going to pretend that didn't happen too?" Haley opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. Then she said something that made my blood boil. This trip was supposed to be about the family, but Madison made it all about her. She was ruining it for everyone. The gasp from the crowd was audible. My uncle looked at her like she'd just said the most ridiculous thing in the world. "Ruining the trip?" he repeated, his voice dripping with disbelief. That's when Haley dug her own grave. She admitted, right there in front of everyone, that she'd pressured my dad to leave me behind. She was being so difficult, and I thought maybe some time apart would help everyone cool off, she said, as if that justified anything. If the crowd was on the fence before, that sealed the deal. My dad tried to salvage the situation by playing the victim. He started rambling about how he was trying to do the best he could, and how it's not easy being a single dad. He even threw in some tears for good measure, but no one was buying it. Lena stepped in at that point, and when Lena talks, people listen. "Logan," she said, using my dad's name in that stern, no-nonsense way only grandmothers can pull off. "I warned you about Haley. I told you she was trouble, but you didn't want to hear it. And now you've hurt Madison in ways I can't even begin to understand. You should be ashamed of yourself." He tried to interrupt, but Lena wasn't having it. "Don't even try to defend yourself. You abandoned your daughter in another state. Do you have any idea how dangerous that was? What if something had happened to her? How would you live with yourself?" My dad had no answer. He just stood there, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. As for Haley, she didn't even try to stick around. After Lena's speech, she grabbed her purse and walked out, muttering something about how this wasn't worth it. Mia and Ava followed her, both looking like they wanted to disappear. The rest of the gathering was awkward, to say the least. My dad didn't leave, but he might as well have. No one wanted to talk to him. People kept coming up to me, apologizing for not knowing what I'd been going through, and saying they were proud of me for standing up for myself. By the time we left, it felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. For the first time, I felt like people finally saw what I'd been dealing with. Like I wasn't crazy for thinking my dad and Haley were toxic. I don't know what's going to happen next, but one thing's for sure. My dad and Haley aren't going to have the same hold over me anymore. This is not over. I'm probably coming back with updates soon. Update 4, hey everyone! This is, hopefully, my final update. A lot has happened since the family gathering, and I've been taking some time to process everything. I wanted to wait until I had some real closure before coming back here. To catch you up quickly, after exposing my dad and Haley at the family party, things escalated. My mom and I decided we couldn't just let it go. We pressed charges against both of them for neglect and abandonment. It felt like such a big step, and honestly, I was terrified. Part of me wondered if I was overreacting or if people would think I was just being petty. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't about revenge. It was about accountability. The legal process was exhausting. There were statements to give, evidence to gather, and a lot of back and forth with lawyers. My mom was incredible through all of it. She made sure I knew I wasn't alone and constantly reminded me that I was doing the right thing. One of the hardest parts was retelling everything over and over. The trip, the mall, how they left me behind without even looking back. Every time I talked about it, I felt like I was reliving the panic and heartbreak all over again. But I kept going because I knew it was necessary. In court, the evidence spoke for itself. It all painted a pretty damning picture. My dad's lawyer tried to argue that it was a misunderstanding and that he thought I was safe, but no one was buying it. Haley's defense wasn't much better. She claimed she didn't have a say in leaving me behind, but then we pulled out text messages where she told my dad I was ruining the trip and that they'd be better off without me. Her lawyer tried to downplay it, saying it was taken out of context, but the damage was done. When the sentencing finally came, I didn't know what to expect. I'd been preparing myself for disappointment, half expecting them to get a slap on the wrist. But while the sentences weren't as harsh as I initially hoped, they still sent a clear message. What they did wasn't okay, and they were being held accountable. My dad was sentenced to 18 months in prison for child neglect and abandonment, followed by 3 years of probation. As part of his probation, he was ordered to attend mandatory parenting and counseling programs. The judge made it clear that his actions showed a serious lapse in judgment, especially since I had to rely on the police for help while he ignored their calls. Haley received 6 months in jail for her role, specifically for her negligence regarding my health and her active encouragement to leave me behind. She was also fined and required to complete community service hours focused on child welfare programs. On top of that, the court ruled that my dad and Haley owed me emotional compensation. They were ordered to pay damages for the emotional distress their actions caused me. The amount wasn't life-changing, but it was enough to cover therapy sessions and give me a little bit of breathing room to focus on myself. The judge even mentioned that this kind of payment was meant to help me heal, not just financially but symbolically. It was an acknowledgement that my suffering was valid. Hearing those rulings felt surreal. For the first time in forever, I felt like someone in a position of authority actually saw what I went through and took it seriously. As for Mia and Ava, they went to live with their grandparents. I've heard bits and pieces about how they're doing, but I honestly don't care enough to find out more. It's not their fault their mom and my dad are terrible people, but I have no interest in staying connected to that part of my life. Living with my mom has been everything I didn't know I needed. At first, it was weird adjusting to a house that didn't feel hostile or stressful all the time. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for her to yell at me or for some drama to pop up out of nowhere, but it never happened. My mom is patient, kind, and genuinely cares about what I have to say. We've been rebuilding our relationship, and it's been amazing. We've had so many long talks about the past, about the divorce, about my dad's manipulation, and about what we both want moving forward. It hasn't been easy, but it's been worth it. For the first time in years, I feel like I have a real family again. Lena, my grandmother, has also been a huge part of my life lately. I didn't realize how much I missed her until we reconnected. She's been helping me work through a lot of the emotions I've bottled up over the years. Sometimes we'll just sit and talk for hours, and it feels like I'm getting back a piece of myself that I lost when my dad cut her off. Do I miss my dad? Honestly, I don't know. Sometimes I think about the person he used to be. The dad who would take me out for ice cream or play board games with me, but that version of him feels like a distant memory, like someone I made up in my head. The man who left me in Portland, who let Haley treat me like garbage, who cared more about appearances than his own daughter, that's the man I remember now, and I don't think I'll ever forgive him for that. As for Haley, I don't think about her much. She's irrelevant to me now, just a bad chapter in my life that I've finally closed. I'm proud of myself for standing up and saying, this isn't okay. It took a lot to get here, but I finally feel like I'm in a good place. My dad and Haley are out of my life, and for the first time in a long time, I feel like I can just focus on being me. To anyone reading this who's going through something similar, you deserve better. Don't let anyone convince you that you're too sensitive or too difficult, or that your feelings don't matter. They do, and you have every right to fight for your happiness and your safety. Thank you to everyone who's been following my story and offering support. It's meant more to me than I can put into words. Here's to new beginnings.